This is the beauty of the DID that this person has got. Any incoherency can just be explained away. I feel like this is going to be used by people to justify insane behavior in fairly standard settings, and if they get queried on it, it will be, oh, I would say a trauma response, actually. By the way, guys, if you find this person attractive as a man, you're a homosexual because they're currently fronting as a he, him male. Please tell me she has an OnlyFans. I need to... Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it because that is literal fetish tier. Dude, you're very rude guy. That is a great name for you because that is extremely rude. What you've just said there, that's crazy, bro. I wanted to talk about this because it seems like exactly up my street kind of video, and it's DissociaDID, and I want to see what alter is presenting it, okay? But I feel like nowadays trauma is used as an instinct on this. Trauma is often used as a catch-all excuse for any behavior that a woman could possibly engage in, right? So, seems a bit incoherent that you said this guy was really bad to you, but you continued to stay, or you met up with him again, and so on, right? This is now met with, well, you know, that's trauma. That's, you know, fight or flight. Okay. But they didn't really fight, and they didn't really flight. Oh, that's a fawn response, you see. Trauma, sometimes when someone's got trauma, it might seem like they really like the person, but actually they're just giving a fawn response, and that's why. Now, freeze, I think I may be unfamiliar with and have heard of before. Okay. I don't know how that's different to fly, you know, well, I guess it's like deer in the headlights, isn't it? So just freezing solid and not moving. But there's a new one that I haven't heard before, and that is flop. Are you guys familiar with flop? Do you know what flop is in terms of a trauma response? Who knows? I'm personally fascinated. I can't wait to find out. And we're going to find out right now in this DissociaDID video about trauma responses. Let's go. Who's it going to be? So place your bets.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by DissociaDID. It's Soren. I know.
Hey, it's Soren. Hey Soren, how's it going? So Soren is fronting. So guys, if you don't realise, this is Soren. Pronouns he, him. Somehow, with all this fucking makeup, okay? So this fella Soren woke up as the you know, the host of the flesh puppet that is DissociaDID, and thought, I want to put a bunch of makeup on as a he, him male. Interesting. Anyway, listen, we're not really here for the alters today. We're here for the takes about trauma. So let's continue.
The makeup doesn't really match the person in the body, but it's okay. It's art. It's cute. It's cool. We like it. Besides...
Oh my God. She literally just... I pause Andy'd. Holy fuck. But what? Wait a second. That's six... Wait, what?
Really match the person in the body, but it's okay. It's art. It's cute. It's cool. We like it. Besides...
My physical appearance totally contradicts my expression of the person that is inhabiting my body, but it's cool. What the fuck, dude? What psychology textbook is this in? Someone tell me, please. Yeah, multiple personality, or sorry, dissociative identity disorder. You may wake up feeling like a man, but you're going to want to wear makeup because it's cool. AGP? AGP alter, maybe?
Right before we left for our break, we did a makeup look on TikTok, and this was when Kaya and Mara were fusing. I was kind of in denial about it still, but we did like eye makeup like this, and it was like butterfly themed eye makeup, I guess you call it. And a lot of people were like, oh my god, we love it, we love it. So I've redone it with the pink hair. What do you think? Do you like it? Today we're going to be talking about
This is the beauty of the DID that this person has got. Any incoherency can just be explained away, and her retarded fan base will just gobble it up because they're already invested in her as a person. Oh my god. I'm glad we watched that video the other day exposing these fucking fraudulent freaks, honestly. But anyway.
Fight or flight, and I bet some of you have only heard fight or flight. Surprise, there's more. There's actually like 5, or depending on who you look at and what resource you look at and what therapist you're listening to, maybe even more, but we're gonna go over 5. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and flop. These are our body's stress and trauma responses. Each of these is an adaptive, functional, short-term survival mechanism.
These responses are interconnected with the autonomic nervous system and are often adaptive in the context of survival. So this, I feel, is the trick that she uses, where she'll reference like a presumably actual talking point from psychology or some shit, right? Like there probably is some sort of truth in the idea that like fight and flight and whatnot are linked to some sort of base human thing within us. But then she just plugs a load of her own fucking analysis on top, much of which I would question if it appears in any credible resource for this sort of thing, you know? But yeah, I guess we'll see. Understanding these reactions can be helpful in various fields, including psychology and trauma studies, to comprehend how individuals cope with stress or danger. I feel like this is going to be another case where any incoherent behavior is excused away with pop psychology bullshit. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen here. But let's give it a chance. Oh, sorry. Let's give him a chance and see what he's got to say today. All right?
In response to perceived threats or danger. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and flop are all defensive mechanisms that are hardwired right into our brain due to our sympathetic nervous system. And we can go over that and the sympathetic nervous system versus the parasympathetic nervous system in another video, if that's something you'd like to see. The limbic system is the area of the brain that's actually developed the least since we were
what is that?
Animals. So it's very, very thrown back into our lizard brain, hardwired deep into how your body responds to perceived threats and danger. Immediate, involuntary, unintentional, the way your brain will immediately react in order to protect you. Because it is so hardwired into our limbic system, we share a lot of these responsibles with other animals in the animal kingdom, like rabbits, dogs, all sorts of stuff. When you hear flop, I bet the first thing you thought of was a rabbit, which obviously they freeze, and some of them flop. Goats do as well. You know those fainting goats? Just play dead. Any animals that play dead, we'll go over a lot of it, but you might be able to relate a certain thing and be like, hold on a minute, I know animals that do that same thing. It's because we're all hardwired a very similar way. It's a primitive adaptive mechanism. For people like us who have...
My instinct on this is like fight or flight or freeze or what. Like there's some truth to this, right? Like I do think there's some truth to an extreme, but here's the thing. I think that it's probably referring to extreme situations. Okay, I think when you think of fight or flight, this is like, you know, someone comes at you with a knife in the street or something insane like that. Some sort of insane, overwhelming, emotional or traumatic thing is happening, boom, there and then. And that's what then leads to that kind of response. Whereas I get the impression this is going to be situations that maybe aren't that traumatic or aren't that problematic, that these are used as an excuse for certain kinds of behavior, you know? Like, oh yeah, well, you know, the woman claimed that this dude raped her, but actually that was a trauma, but she was like happy to be with him and slept with him, no problems. Well, that was just a flop response, actually. He did still rape her, even though the actions are totally incoherent to the claim that's being made. But we'll see. Maybe I'm poisoning the well. Maybe I'm Porzandying. Let's give Soren a chance to explain himself, okay?
Have PTSD or CPTSD or DID, these trauma responses are even more highly ingrained. They're recurrent behaviors that can easily be triggered. Most people will be more susceptible to responding with 1 or 2 of these trauma responses, and that can often be linked back to attachment theory and your childhood. Originally, fight and flight were thought to be the only responses to stress, and that was focused mainly on the autonomic nervous system. Freeze, as a trauma response type, was later developed after observing rats in stressful situations. Before I go into too much detail, and I can make a much deeper, more in-depth video if you'd like us to, and remember, if you're a Patreon member, you can vote on what videos you want to see next and suggest them to us from just £1. You can view our Patreon here. If that's something you'd like, let us know. But
I've worked professionally with survivors of sexual violence. We talk about these responses frequently. I've never ever heard of flop. I mean, flop is the one that jumps out to me. Fight, flight, and freeze I've heard of before, and I would just think, yeah, okay, that makes some sort of sense to me, right? but on an extreme situation,
but how
not
do
just
I make
like
money off depressed
minor.
people?
Humans
Fawn,
are predators too.
maybe.
They are comparing human psychology to prey animals. I feel like that doesn't work that way.
Thank you for the $5. Flop sounds absurd, but we'll hear it out. But I mean, again, this person does not have credentials to talk about this in any meaningful way. You know, they but they present themselves as some sort of authority because they're fucking mental or something. I don't know. Anyway, give them a chance. Let's hear them out. I am poisoning the well a bit. Let's just fucking relax. Okay, just hear them out. All right.
For now, we're just going to stick to what they are and how they might affect you. It's important to remember that what I'm talking about now isn't just random reactions to behaviors or personality traits. This is when you have been pushed into a trauma response where you feel very threatened or as though your life is in danger, or past trauma that you've experienced is being reactivated and making you feel the same way that you did then, as though your life is in danger, even if that might not be the case now. If you get triggered and you have PTSD, it's very likely that you'll be pushed into one of these responses. It can happen with other people too who don't have PTSD.
But wait a second. Especially with the spate of self-diagnosis that happens, you're creating circumstances where people can have an incoherent response to an input, and they can write it off as being, well, I had a trauma response. I mean, this happens, right?
The fight, flight, freeze or fawn thing is for danger. Not my boyfriend was mean to me and insulted me a lot, but people use it for anything.
Jessica Pizzle with the $5. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm getting at, right? I feel like this is going to be used by people to justify insane behavior in fairly standard settings. And if they get queried on it, it will be, oh, I just had a trauma response, actually. Disassociate. Soren explained it in a video, actually. Go and watch Disassociate.
But this isn't like average behavior. So for example, if you're just a naturally confident or outspoken person, that does not mean that you're in a fight trauma response. You can just have a confident, outgoing, sassy personality. That's different from being in a trauma response, and that can be in relation to any of these: fight, flight, fawn, freeze or flop. So let's start with the one that most people probably know off the top of their heads, and that's fight. The fight trauma response, some people call it snapping back really aggressively, being very fast to anger, extremely defensive. It can also look like always being on edge and expecting an attack, tense muscles, clenched jaws and fists ready to go. It can be a temper that's very explosive and unpredictable.
Is this true? I thought that this was related to extreme circumstances, not just getting in an argument with someone. I thought it was like there is someone, you know, bearing down on you with a weapon, trying to rob you, and you have a fucking instant response of like, you run away or you try and fight, and it's like, you know, immediate and uncontrollable. Whereas this sounds like just normal things you might feel in the course of having an argument. Yeah, exactly. I thought we're talking life or death, but they're seeming like, you know, fairly standard things that happen in your life. That can be a trauma response.
House of Pain response: get up, stand up, throw your hands up and jumping around.
Thank you for the super chat. Explosive and unpredictable temper. This is, yeah, I don't know. This seems to, I mean, I feel like this gives loads of room for people to act like total pricks in their life, and then when challenged on it, they can claim some sort of mental illness, self-diagnosed, and I had an explosive temper there, not because I'm being unreasonable and I need to moderate my behavior, but I can't help it because I'm having a trauma response, right? I mean, that's what it comes across like to me. What's happening here? Not, you know, the fact that these are the examples that they're using. Because, you know, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I'm fairly certain that one aspect of like trauma management is you must take on, you know, a level of responsibility in managing that yourself, so you don't act unreasonably for the sake of others, right?
I have a donate response to trauma.
Thank you for the $5. I'm hypervigilant as a trauma response, and I found medical treatment for that. I don't just lash out and be like, oopsie, my trauma. Yeah, exactly. Like, you've got to take some level of responsibility to fix something within you so that you don't lash out. But you know, this just is giving again, I feel like maybe I'm prejudging. I'm willing to give it a chance, but I've got warning signs already about this in the examples they're using. So let's hear her out, though.
Can also be talking back to authority figures and challenging them in ways that might not be appropriate or expected. Using taunting, mocking, insulting, and shaming people as a response to perceived threats. And my way...
What? Acting like an asshole is just a trauma fight response, actually. That's what it sounds like, dude.
Or the highway kind of view on life. If other people disagree with you or challenge you on something, you're very much I'm going to attack you. My way is the right way. And if you don't agree with that, you can get out of my life. It's very aggressive way of looking at perceiving criticism. Other kinds of aggression like yelling, raising your voice with not much provocation, slamming doors, screaming, throwing things at people or at walls. I vividly remember once setting a boundary with someone after I'd helped them out, and then they immediately were like, well, now I'm going to take advantage of you. And I said, you give me back the thing I just gave you. I'm not having that. And they responded by screaming at me that it was too late and throwing a controller at my head, which hit the wall behind me, and it came out of nowhere. And it was just because they felt challenged or like I was standing up to them. And it can be very split-second reactions like that. Whereas a healthier person who's not been pushed into a trauma response, somebody who's worked through their stuff and can communicate effectively and directly, would maybe say, I don't like that, or I'm not comfortable with that, or this is how that made me feel, and I'm confused by this change in reaction, or whatever, and express their emotions. Somebody who's been pushed into a fight response will immediately go to, not necessarily always.
Also, it feels like, I'm like, okay, well, is there a criticism there somewhere? But it's like, I don't think there is, because they're saying pushed into a trauma response. There's very little kind of scrutiny of the action of the person. And it's like, well, they're being pushed into it. If you're pushed into something and you react, well, that's not really your fault, or you can't really take accountability for that, right? Anyway, couple of issues already. I'm a bit skeptical about this. I am biased. Okay, I can't help myself. But yeah, this is pretty bad so far. I'm not an expert on this. But yeah, I think that if you do have these issues, it's up to you to fix that. You can't go around in the world, looking at the external factors that are influencing you. You need to have control over that to just live a normal life, right?
Violence, but aggression, tenseness, defensiveness. Because like I said with that example, while other people might feel calm and safe enough to not be pushed into a trauma response and be able to communicate and talk their way through their feelings, somebody who's been pushed into a fight response is feeling like they're threatened, wonderful. And their brain may be considering that, especially if they do have
there is an allegation against her that's not public yet, and she's trying to front load her excuses for why she was a horrible
Oh my god, dude. I would love, thank you for the $5. I would love to see a DissociaDID allegation. That would be absolutely hilarious. Let's fuck it, look, dude. Listen, it is the year of the allegation, so who knows? I guess maybe we'll see.
Previous trauma pushed them straight into this feels like a life or death situation.
But wait, she's got the get out of jail free card. Oh, that was actually, Big Greg. Big Greg is the one who actually was fronting that did that. But they've now fused with Little Susan, and they fused into a new personality, so that personality doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I have to fight my way out of it. I am running in the savannah. I'm an animal running away from a predator. What am I going to do? Am I going to run? I'm going to fight. Defensive, reactive, extremely reactive, often very fast. And that can also then push them into feeling like they need to protect themselves at any cost. When you come down from this trauma response, a lot of people often feel very remorseful or embarrassed, regretful of their behaviors, because you're not necessarily thinking clearly. Your brain is taking over your conscious thought. Your lizard brain is telling you what to do and pumping. Your energy, your muscles, everything are full of endorphins that are preparing you to fight as if your life were in danger. Reasonable thought sometimes switches off, and then when you come back down out of that, a lot of the time you can be like, holy shit, what did I do? What have I done?
How many prey animals fight back? My understanding with prey animals is that they only ever fight back if there's literally no other option, right? And they get torn to shreds most of the time. But prey animals run when faced with a threat that they, perceive as being that severe, right? I've seen a couple of zebras try and fight a lion. Or like if a youngster gets caught, sometimes you see a couple of zebras go at the lion or something like that. But normally it is like chips are down, like no other option type situation, like a cornered rat. Yeah, they say the cornered rat thing, isn't it? Right. But anyway, listen, that's beyond my remit. I don't know about animal behavior. Okay. But yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't really know if comparing us to like a zebra or a rat is necessarily, I mean, we do it colloquially, right? Like cornered rat, etc. But I don't know if there's actually a connection there beyond, oh, well, we did this. Basically, we pumped a rat full of some random shit and they blew up, and maybe that would happen to a human too. There's like maybe some little link there that you could make. But generally speaking, there's quite a big difference between the way that our brains work and the way that a rat's brain works, right? Anyway, let's just continue.
Why have I done that? I feel terrible about it. That's not who I am. I would never want to make someone feel like that kind of thing. Some people don't feel like that. Other people do. Being pushed into a trauma response does not necessarily make you a bad person. That does not mean that your actions are acceptable, or that you shouldn't face consequences for them, or that you don't need to work on it.
Hey, okay. To be fair to Soren here, I like the fact that he said that, to be honest. That's good. Okay. Not a bad person. Well, I don't know if I agree with that. You might still be a bad person. But yeah. Okay. Fair play. I'll give her that. This lady is an example of a huge problem included in the self-ID, that people think being something makes you an expert on that thing. The lady doesn't know shit. She's just crazy. Yeah, that's the problem, is she's got no, like, I mean, I guess maybe she's got like a thing somewhere where it's like, yeah, look, we're not mental health professionals. I don't know, man. I think there's like a little thing buried in the comments here, but clearly the implication here is you should listen to what I've got to say about mental health issues because I suffer with them, you know? But the legal thing is there, right? If you, oh no, I'm not giving you mental health advice from a professional, like I say it there. Well, no, but the implication is that you know what you're talking about. So you want to be seen with some gravitas and authority, right? I still think this person, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that could be true. Maybe they do believe what they're saying, but I don't know. I just think they are funny to laugh at mainly.
But it doesn't mean that inherently you as a person, or you within your soul, are bad or cruel or evil. It means that you have some trauma. You're very easily being pushed, or maybe not easily, depending on the situation, but you've been pushed into a trauma response, and that's something that you need to address and work through on your own, so that you don't harm yourself and others.
Another faker with alters that are in a relationship. Lamau.
Wait, hang on. So that's someone that's got DID, but there's a relationship happening within one body. Is that right?
Other people, but it does not mean that you as an individual are bad. Your behavior and your actions might be bad. You might have done things you're not proud of. That does not mean that there's no hope left, that you can't work on it, that you can't heal from it, and that you can't do better. Okay, let's have a look at the flight trauma response. The flight trauma response might look like you're always rushing to do things, you're always going, you feel like you can't stop, you're very tense, very, very go, must do now.
Dude, where is this? I feel like she says a bunch of stuff that's got some background that she just quotes, but then rolls off into saying crazy shit that hasn't got any backing, because, again, I'm not an expert, okay? But I thought that when they say flight, it means life or death, and you decide to get the fuck out of there, right? Not you're just a kind of busy seeming person or something. Right? Like, I don't know, man. This just seems absurd to me. I feel like there's these character traits that are being described that aren't indicative of any of the, you know, psychological response to extreme trauma. It's just that's the kind of person that you are, and maybe you need to work on that a bit. Yeah, the horoscopification of mental illness, yes.
You might feel uncomfortable or panicked when you have to stay still. Your energy might be spent micromanaging situations or the people around you. You might have a bit of an avoidant personality and a habit of ending relationships very quickly with very little warning and literally running from your problems, and having a phobia of commitment. You feel threatened, you feel endangered, you feel like there's any chance of a threat to you or your safety, you want to run from it. You won't sit and stay and communicate and work through it. You're out the door. You'll cut them off, end the things, whatever you need to do, you're gone. Or just avoiding it. It doesn't have to be literally running away from something. It could be complete avoidance. You've got to make a decision that's really hard and you feel very stressed about it and you feel very triggered about it. You might just not make a decision. You'll run from the situation. You might feel very trapped very easily, even in situations where realistically you might not be. You may also be a chronic overachiever, always throwing yourself into situations situations where you can't stop.
What?
There's no time to think, you just have to go. There's no downtime for you, there's no car.
What is any of this based on? You noticed earlier they had references. They were talking about the different things. I'm telling you, this is part of what she does. She gives it validity, then spins off to a bunch of nonsense that isn't anywhere written down. Apart from on Tumblr or some shit. Thank you very much for the $2. It just feels like this is all made the fuck up. Oh yeah, if you go and read this psychology textbook that talks about a flight response, it will tell you all about how you might have an avoidant personality. Where do I read this?
There's no sit and relax, because like in one of the other points I mentioned, you might feel very stressed and tense when you have to stay still. You have to always be doing something. It often presents as anxiety and panic attacks can be a trauma response too. It can also look like being intentionally or unintentionally distracted all the time. Or a lot of the time. People who experience the freeze trauma response may become non-verbal. You may hear of people who have experienced trauma who, when they become triggered, they cannot speak anymore. They go non-verbal. It's a freeze trauma response in some cases. There can be other reasons for going non-verbal. Autism, for example. It's not always going to be just this, but this is what...
Double check. You may be having the freeze response, but you could also be severely autistic. Do one of those online tests and check, okay? These are all just PTSD responses. They are not the fight, flight, freeze responses at all. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm sure that some of this, there's probably some mental illness that might explain some of the behavior she's talking about. But I don't really think it fits in with what she's trying to present it as. Again, it's difficult because I'm just here to laugh at this dumb broad, you know? Or dumb guy, I should say. So I don't know the ins and outs of all the trauma shit, but it just seems very transparently, spun up bullshit to justify, a video for clicks.
One reason that it can happen. You may feel completely numb, like life is pointless, there's no point to anything, you have very little real emotion left, you're very cut off from the things that you experience. Any emotional response with you is literally frozen and you don't experience it. You may dissociate from it. It can also be a point of shutdown, which can look like giving people silent treatment or complete avoidance of topics, people, subjects, situations, environments, hiding away from the world, literally shutting yourself in and off, away from people, away from the outside world and specific places.
Good luck.
Procrastinating and experiencing an inability to make even very small decisions. You are frozen, you cannot think, you cannot make a choice, you just freeze. Some people have likened it to like endless social media scrolling and binge watching things. You're frozen in the space that you're in and you cannot interact properly with the outside world.
Oh my god, do you know what else this does as well? Bro, this is going to give a bunch of people who spend a bit too much time on social media retarded justifications for why they're mentally ill. Oh yeah. Sometimes I stream social media a bit too much. Maybe I'm absolutely riddled with PTSD, actually, and it's just a freeze response.
You just are frozen in the action that you're on right now and can't move away from it, can't stop. And if it's an easy repetitive action like scrolling, you just keep going because you're frozen. Experiencing confusion over what's real or unreal, dissociation, and it can be confused with depression. It may also look like giving up on things quickly. The fourth trauma response, fawn, is actually when somebody moves closer to the experience of their trauma or abuse. They're trying to play safe or win over their abuser or the situation that's making them feel threatened, and they will try to act in the right way.
Do you know what? Okay. I think there is some truth to this, okay? Right? I don't like that the term is a bit gay, but I do think there's probably a dynamic that exists. I mean, it's like battered wife syndrome, right? That's a classic thing that we use, isn't it? The idea that a wife could be getting absolutely fucking battered every which way but Sunday, but they'll still go back in some fashion, right? There's probably some truth to that. However, the amount that it exists in the world as an actual phenomenon that is observable, that you could find if you were to therapize the person or whatever, versus the amount that it happens is vastly, vastly, vastly different. Okay? Right? So I think that whilst I agree that there's something in it where someone will get closer to their abuser in some way, I think that more often than not, it's used incorrectly as a way to justify or excuse incoherent behavior in a situation where someone is making some sort of allegation against someone, you know? Oh, you claim this person did X, Y, and Z to you, yet you acted like this. That's a bit inconsistent with your claim. Oh, well, that was just a fawn response. What a fawn response was you continuing to talk to him on Discord and playing video games with him, even though you claim that he'd abused you. I mean, that doesn't really sound like yeah, that you wouldn't understand. That's just what fawners do, right? Whereas I think it's more relevant in the situation where there's a physicality, like a consistent, repeated domestic situation happening. Do you know what I mean? Something like that, right? So one of those terms that has got some sort of use at its core, but it gets used way too broadly in order to justify totally incoherent behavior in situations where allegations are being, stated, right? But yeah.
To try and make it stop. It can look like people pleasing. It can look like going along with other people's beliefs, opinions, decisions, taking on board their values as your own without thinking about what it means to you or what you want to do or your opinions and your wants and your desires and how you feel, because you're just...
It's like you're describing being agreeable. Being agreeable, right, doesn't mean that you're having a trauma fawn response. It just means you're an agreeable person, and maybe that's a character trait you want to work on, or you could even be being social. It could be even simpler than that you're just a social person and you want to say yes to things and go along with what people want because you want to have a fun time. Oh my god. Yeah, I feel like a function of this channel is exactly kind of what I was thinking earlier with, like, giving people who have got issues names to, like, certain behaviors so they can feel like they've got something wrong with them, where some of the stuff is just kind of normal and not that big a deal, or it's a character flaw that maybe you want to work on, but not a trauma response and not fawn. I mean, it's absurd to say that if you're kind of agreeable, you're having a fawn response to something. I mean, what on earth? This is just fucking complete nonsense.
That's wonderful. But how do I make money off depressed people?
Everyone on Kick Chat, please stop calling me a loser. There are lots of 30-year-olds who still play Xbox.
Very true. Musty, a guy we can trust. Thank you for the $10.
Trying to placate them. If you mirror them, if you get close to them, if you make them like you, then they're not going to want to attack you. That's the thought process that can happen when you're fawning. And a lot of the time, I mean, for us, fawn has been one of our most common defense mechanisms when we experience trauma. And sometimes there is no thought. We just would do whatever we were told and people please to the maximum, no matter what discomfort that caused us, or whether it went against our values, or whether we were in pain, or any thought for the future. It was just, don't hurt me anymore. Like me, please stop.
Okay, this person, I've said this many times covering this person, they're definitely fucking insane, okay? I think there's some mental illness happening here. I just don't agree with the mental illness she's claiming that she's got. Well, I was fucking a bit... Well, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is she talking about exactly? Okay, anyway, come on, let's continue.
And that's it. So sometimes that can be thoughts, sometimes it really is. Lizard brain completely takes over, your brain shuts down and you do whatever it takes to fawn to this person and what they want you to do and what they feel about the world. To make yourself a smaller target as possible, someone less threatening, someone less of a challenge, someone less different. You fit into the pack, you're less likely to be attacked. Can look like dissociating. On a low level, dissociating can...
Oh my god, it's every time dissociating with this fucking person, dude. Teaching white women the term disassociating was one of the biggest mistakes of recent times. We should not have let the white women have that word. Because fuck me if it doesn't get used to an absurd degree. Imagine this is your sister. Now this is Soren. He, him, brother. At the moment, okay? At the moment. By the way, guys, if you find this person attractive as a man, you're a homosexual because they're currently fronting as a he, him male. Okay? We shouldn't have taught women to read. Yes, now we're talking.
Be like spacing out, people call it zoning out. Higher levels of dissociation can be full-on dissociative disorders like derealization and depersonalization as well, so DPDR. And then obviously you go into PTSD, CPTSD, both have dissociation involved, DID, OSDD, all that kind of stuff. But those are full-on disorders, not just a trauma response, even though most of those ones that I spoke about come from trauma. It can be letting other people make decisions for you and not making choices or decisions on your
that's
own,
wonderful.
needing
But how do
permission
I make money
to make
off
your own
depressed
decisions.
people?
Where the fuck did that come from? Hey, look at Lanius. Thank you for the resub. Appreciate it. That was a bit confusing. Thank you very much for the resub.
Decisions or choices. So for example, maybe you have threatened or re-traumatized, you're in a very stressed space and you feel like you need to be given permission to leave the room or go to the toilet or eat or something like that, avoiding any situations or discussions that could potentially lead to conflict. Fearing saying no, being overly polite and agreeable, being hyper-aware of other people's needs, wants, desires, emotions while being ignorant to or repressing your own. And relying on other people to help solve your problems, looking to other people to tell you what to do, what's right or wrong. It can also lead to identity confusion when it's sustained for long periods of time. For example, this can happen in people who have CPTSD. If you don't know what CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
You spend so...
What's that then? Is that a real thing? Dude, honestly, I've become ever more skeptical, dude. Okay. I don't know about it, so I'm not going to comment too much on it, okay? Right? I just I've got an ever increasing skepticism. You say it's very real, okay? Mental illness is fake. None of it's real, okay? You just need to pull yourself up and you'll be fine, okay? Pull yourself together. No, come on, I don't believe that. Complex is what you'd get in World War I getting shelled all day. Oh yeah, PTSD used to be shell shock, didn't it? Yeah. I don't know, dude. I don't even know where I begin to look at this stuff. I guess Google is a first port of call. Complex PTSD. Okay. Right. Complex PTSD. Oh, okay. Right, okay. Basically, it's PTSD, but you're also absolutely fucking riddled with other issues. Basically, you got complex PTSD if you got PTSD, but you also have problems with managing your emotions and having relationships. PTSD and your brain is gigafucked at the same time. Okay. May also include feelings of worthlessness, shame and guilt, problems controlling your emotions, finding it hard to feel connected, relationship problems. Okay. I mean, here's the other thing too, right? I feel like this is one of those things that people are probably going to diagnose as of themselves. But PTSD normally is extreme input, isn't it? It's normally very extreme to get to that level. I'm assuming these are going to be similar for normal PTSD too, right? Childhood abuse, yeah. Domestic violence, sexual abuse, torture, sex trafficking or slavery, and war. I feel like half of these fucking stupid bints on social media have got PTSD, just had a bit of a bad relationship or something, and that tends to be what they point to. But yeah. Okay, well, I accept that complex PTSD is something that exists in the medical nature, but I do wonder how much of it is just all. We need to call this type of PTSD something because it's a bit worse. Complex PTSD. Okay, let's go with that. That'll do. You know? What is this? Dr. Scott G. It's a lot to go through, but it is real.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't need to watch you really about it. I believe it's a real thing. But my guess would be it's a thing that exists. And it's one of those conditions that we don't really truly understand as best as we can. So we just kind of go, well, it's complex PTSD. I'm going to be totally wrong about that. That's the vibe that I get. I feel there's a lot of conditions like that. where we don't truly understand the depths of it and the nature of it because the brain is so complex. So we just put a label on it and just fucking file it away under that, you know? Boom. There we go. That'll do. Giga PTSD. Let me know when Giga PTSD is a thing.
Long fawning and pleasing everyone around you and submitting to them, that you're left with little to no sense of who you actually are and what you want and what your personality is.
Okay, but don't some people do that as a kink as well? Is that not a kink thing too? I don't know. How can you tell the difference?
Feel almost impossible to figure out and reconnect with your own wants and desires and personality when it doesn't revolve around pleasing other people to stay safe and mirroring other people to ensure your safety. And then finally, last but not least, the flop, or some people call it faint trauma response. It's a lesser known response, but it is also a biologically determined response to acute.
Oh look, she's quoting Bracker 2004. Bracker 2004 flop response. What does that come up with? Oh, wait a second. Oh, here we go. Look, hey, I think this is it. H. Stefan Bracker, 2004. Abstract. Freeze, flight, fight, fright, faint. Okay, so it looks like some fucking quack has written up some shit about there being another one, which hasn't been replicated or discussed further in any meaningful way, and they've just included it because it's a little quirky thing to put in their video. I ain't reading all that, man. I'm going to go ahead and say that's what's happened here. That's my guess. But let's see what they've got to say.
Stress as a defense mechanism. The flop response, again, some people call it faint. We're going to call it flop because it makes us think of bunnies and that feels nicer. It's very similar to the freeze trauma response, but it may also include total bodily collapse, which can look like blacking out and fainting, collapsing, losing consciousness, seizures, losing control.
Bro! Huh? Isn't that just something your body can do when it's put to an extreme level? I mean, that is an extreme thing that's going to happen, but normally that would be explained by some sort of physiological thing happening, right? Also, the fact that they're calling it flop because it feels nicer is wild. Dude. Okay, dude. I feel like we jumped the shark a bit here. I don't know, man. Maybe there's an extreme case of this happening, but fucking hell. Imagine talking to this insane chick during a fight and she just... Yeah, exactly. No, you're triggering my flop response. Oh, you triggered my flop response. Don't do that again. Stop talking to me in that way. Seizures is wild, man. I would have thought that would be some sort of physiological issue that you've got. Not just, oh, I feel a bit traumatized. I'm going to have a seizure. Oh. Stop shouting at me. You're giving me a seizure. Okay, come on. Stop fucking around.
Control over your bodily functions, being completely disoriented, appearing very disengaged from everything happening around you and yourself, showing a lack of emotions and complete and utter submission. Similar to how fawns show submission, but this is like final end of the road, complete submission. This can also cause catatonia or dissociative seizures or non.
What the fuck, dude? You can go catatonic. I don't know. I don't know what's going on anymore. I feel like this is some quirky thing that's been found. Some retard in 2004 wrote some shit up about this. And they found it and they've gone, yeah, I'm including this in my trauma response video. You become a real doll. Okay.
Epileptic seizures like we have in people who have experienced extreme trauma and abuse. Some people who've experienced this trauma response or seen other people experiencing this trauma response can liken it to literally playing dead. Your body completely shuts down. So, for example, with going catatonic, we have a whole video on what catatonia is if you'd like to watch it. Like I said, people might liken it to playing dead, but it is a completely unconscious and immediate reaction. It's involuntary.
So wait, if someone's fucked in the head enough, we're fucking around with it, but that's what they're saying, right? They're saying that someone could be so traumatized, now such a trauma response, that they just literally collapse to the ground in a catatonic or seizure-like state. Right, okay. Dude. Is that it? I don't know, man. It's hard to say.
It's not somebody deciding, like, verbally in their head and thinking to themselves, what would be the safest thing for me to do in this situation? I will play dead. I mean, that can also be a trauma response, but that's a thought out one, a decision that you might make in a traumatic situation. That's just as valid and probably can also count. But in situations like passing out or going into a non-epileptic seizure or experiencing catatonia, your body and your brain, your sympathetic nervous system is making the decision for you. It's a reaction and not a conscious action. Rabbits do this, so hence the name flop. Rabbits do this when they feel threatened, and so do the goats that fainting goats.
Wait, I thought that rabbits and stuff do that. I thought that's like playing. I thought they're playing dead. No, because there's a. I mean, I don't know animal physiology or whatever enough. But I don't think a rabbit is got the same level of consciousness and awareness as a human does to have this happen, right? Oh, possums play dead. Right, okay. Rabbits flop when they're comfy and trust you. The point I'm making is I don't think that they've got complex enough brain structure for them to have this trauma response that is being referred to here. So it's like, you know, you're comparing us to literal beasts when the dynamics at play are very different. I mean, rabbits can't even fucking talk. You know? Like, yeah. God, I remember years ago, had a little rabbit. Went out one morning. It was stiff as a board. It was dead. Put it in a little box. Buried it. My daughter didn't really fucking care, though. She was only like 3 or 4 at the time, but she was just like, yeah, whatever. She didn't really seem to care that much. Oh...
You may have seen them. They get shocked, they get surprised, they feel endangered, they literally go stiff and will faint. When you have PTSD or CPTSD, you might experience things like hyperarousal or hypoarousal, hypervigilance.
Wait, wait. Hyperarousal, as in like, you know, bricked up. Is that what? Dude, what the fuck is going on, man? This is such a dumb video. Oh, I'm glad she's taken us
depressive episodes regularly, and that can mean that you display any of these trauma responses pretty regularly too. And if you do have a history of prolonged trauma, like for example you have CPTSD, these trauma responses can be kicked off in situations that are actually relatively unthreatening because your body is always prepared to re-experience those kind of traumas. It's hardwired to be hyper aware, hypervigilant, hyper-aroused, and ready to protect you at any given moment. If you are in a situation that is objectively not a real threat or danger, but you're already stressed and the current situation reminds you of an experience where you were genuinely threatened in the past, this can also activate your sympathetic nervous system and push you into...
Very Rude Guy has got an interesting comment here I just want to draw attention to. Please tell me she has an OnlyFans. I need to... Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it because that is literal fetish tier. Okay? Dude, you're fucking... Very Rude Guy. That is a great name for you because that is extremely rude. What you've just said there. That's crazy, bro.
...to one of these trauma responses. Lower levels of severity, they're also called stress responses. And we can, again, go into detail about this, and we can go into polyvagal theory and all sorts of stuff like that if that is interesting to you. But I think we will leave this one here for now. I think this is a good place to stop, don't you? Like we mentioned before, we do have a Patreon and Patreon exclusives.
Get the shit in
that
there.
Includes things like outtakes and bloopers and funny moments. It includes things like videos that will never see the light of day publicly that we either weren't happy with, or by the time we were ready to upload it, the situation had changed. So it's sort of little insights into things that our system has experienced or what was going on in our system that will never be seen publicly. It is only exclusive for our patrons. And if you would like to suggest videos like, hey Soren, guys, everybody, we want to see a video on this, please make it for us, you can suggest that through our Patreon. And you can also vote on other people's suggestions to help us choose what you want to see as part of the DissociaDID project. And you can also get things like merch, including our hand-drawn art posters like this, for example. You can get clothes, hoodies, stickers, whatever you want, whatever you so desire. You can probably find it on our Patreon, which you can join from $1 a month or whatever the equivalent is in your country. And that is the best way to support us. And we are so grateful to everybody who's a Patreon member. We are also in a court case against somebody called Sergio Costa. And if you don't know the details about that and everything that he did to us, there is a playlist on our channel called What Happened to DissociaDID, which goes through everything.
I think I covered this. Anyway, this is just the same sign-off they do for all their other videos, so I think we're done with this. But yeah, I think I covered it. And I do think, I mean, I think it was just her side of it, but it does seem like this guy is a bit of a nutter, you know? But that shill is next level. She is fucking... Soren, has got it on lockdown. Absolutely going ham on the shilling. But, yeah. There we go. Right, guys. Yeah, very broad, very applicable to everyone. I mean, I don't know what benefit you would get being a trauma victim watching that. I think you'd be better off just fucking speaking to a therapist. Okay. People are discussing a streamer, Chudlogic, and his recent controversy about teaching minors to gamble on stream. Bro. Dude, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. Viewers are upset about this and are calling for his account to be banned. Where did that come from?